Well, welcome back today. Today we're working on a little knife that kind of has a little bit of an issue with the bevel. So on one side, bevel looks good all the way down. Doesn't quite match up with this side, especially towards the tip. So I'm going to start teaching you guys how to feather things out. So basically the bevel from the heel to about right there, is good. Just basically the tip is more or less just a little bit off. So I started reprofiling this, went ahead and used a 120 stone to get me started. Just to make sure that you guys understand, for me, anything that's 80 grit all the way up to 340, something like that, that's more or less a reprofile. So anything that is 400 all the way up to 800 is more or less your fine sharpening. And then anything beyond that, so 1,000 all the way up to 3,000 and strops, those are just polishing it out. So as you can see, that tip is just a little bit more narrow than the rest. And I've got the front and the back pretty much lined up for my reprofiling. But I'm going to feather this. What that means, I'm going to spend a little bit of time without slipping off the tip to try to even that out a little bit more. So go ahead and hit that, making sure I'm not falling off the stone. I'm going to about the middle of the stone at the tip. But as I'm doing this, I'm going to start forming an issue roughly about right there. And so feathering it out will keep that from being an abrupt change. And that's what we're after, because that's what ended up occurring when I was sharpening it in the first place. So try not to fall off the tip. Just start feathering that out just a little bit more. Sometimes this can happen where the factory sharpened the knife, or whenever they made the knife, was just a little bit off. Like, let's say they're stamping out their knife blanks, something like that. Heat treat warped it just a little bit. There's a lot of things that can happen. Or the guy who sharpened it was having a Monday or a Friday. Getting that out just a little bit. And this is how you feather. You're just slowly moving it back, trying to even the whole thing out. There we are. Not perfect. This knife doesn't have a sharpening choil. So once again, this area back here, from here all the way to where my fingertip is, you can see that there's a lot of extra grit in there, and you can actually see the shine. And that's just kind of going to happen. Till about the third sharpening, and that'll be pretty much done with, and it'll look a lot better. Basically what you can do is, as you're trying to sharpen it, if this is my edge and this is a little bit thicker, is you're laying the stone like this, and you're basically trying to chop it down to where it evens out, and then moving across. So just about like that. So this side isn't touching at all, this side is touching. You can goof that up though. You can raise the edge up too much on one side, and then you're digging a valley in there. It's going to be real hard to get back out. But all we're really worried about right now is the tip. Make sure the tip looks nice and good. Finish aligning it. And then we can move on to the other side. So go ahead and do our 10s. By the way, this is a Aus-8 steel on a Boker Kalashnikov Dessert Warrior, or Dessert Warrior. Funny thing behind this knife is somebody at Blade HQ ended up trying to order Desert Warriors, and they spelled it dessert. Boker thought it was funny, so they went ahead and made some Dessert Warriors, ended up being pretty popular. I went ahead and bought this knife, just sheer gimmick. Ausate's probably not one of my favorite steels, but it's in that ballpark of it's okay. Don't have the same issues with Ausate typically that you would with cheaper steels. But it is about as soft as I really care to go. So we're on our 5s. There we go. And all I'm doing is poking my head around the side. I want to see exactly where the, if I have any issues from feathering out. And you should be able to see it if the issues are there. So now we'll go to our 3s. And then we'll go from 120 all the way up to 600. All right. Good thing about this steel is it's a real good practice steel to learn on. You can get a pretty big burr in it, so it can teach you how to get the burr back out, but it's supposed to be somewhere on the order of like a 440 steel is where it's at. All right, do another 10. There we are. Something to think about with these knife sharpening systems, I'll always mention it, is the coils or springs that are on these systems. You have to make sure that you periodically look them over. Make sure that you have that tightened down. All it's holding it in is a bolt, and you're moving it back and forth, and that can wiggle it loose. And much like Bob Ross, you don't have to hold hard and fast to the idea of it needs to have 10, it needs to have 5s, and it needs to have 3s. If you have a swipe that doesn't feel right, or you run off the tip too much, and you want to give it an extra swipe to try to even it out just a hair more, do it. There we go. All right, down to the 5s. This normally isn't a knife steel that I would want to go all the way through progression with, all the way up to a 3000 and jump into a strop. I will strop it always. I always strop because you have that the burr that builds up, even if it's small. Burr can be a pain in the butt, and because this is a steel that, in my opinion, likes to build a big burr, I'm going to go ahead and strop it a little bit extra. So instead of about 20 swipes total on each side, I'm probably going to do 30, and that'll convex it out. So what's happening at the edge of the bevel is you have these rigid stones, so you end up having a pretty fine point, depending on, you know, like 25, 17, somewhere in there. So it's pretty tight a point. Well, when you start working on the strop, what's going to happen is it's going to round it out, because this is a lot thinner. So instead of hitting all the way across the bevel the same. It's really not. It's just hitting more towards the front. So you're getting like the front half of it. And that little bit of a change is all it needs to hit that far off. So I'm going to go ahead and jump up to our 1000 grit. I make sure that I keep the numbers at the back. When I'm starting my push, I don't want those numbers getting hung up. Especially when it's a new stone. Those numbers are going to be a little bit more aggressively pronounced. Over time, they kind of start to go away. And I'm just using the lightest pressure that I possibly can to go through the motion. Let gravity do its job. And here in the near future, I'll probably reset up the Ruxin Pro so you guys can see how that goes, how they sharpen. They have some pluses and minuses, just like this sharpening system does. This being the Ketaped, 0.156 is about as large of a or thick as a knife stock that you can really work on. You know, it doesn't like getting opened up more than that, and I just don't want to mess with it being aluminum for the clamps. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But what this Ketaped does, as opposed to what the Ruxin Pro does, is the clamps on the Ruxin Pro, on most of them, when you go to clamp it in, it goes in straight. That's why having pocket knives that have a flat, see where that line is? Everything back here is flat. Everything back here is flat. So I line my tape up on that flat. On this side, always this side, because I always start off with the point going to the left. But so that helps out with this one, or with the Ruxin Pro. With this one, the clamps come in like this, and what that's good for is when you have a fairly thick spine and then there's no flat and then it just tapers into a point. So that's going to be more like kitchen knives. But today we're working on, we got a little bit, basically this clamp is doing most of the work. This one's just kind of holding on and helping. Go. Don't overuse your stone either. You don't need to be starting off right there. If you get into a habit of starting your push too close, eventually you're gonna accidentally start too soon, and then you're gonna goof up your blade a little bit, and then it's gonna be more work. So I mean, hell, you can start right there, you can start right there, doesn't really matter. Some people will push sideways, and that's okay too. I don't really care for it. I'd rather work the whole stone. I don't want to put spots where there's a line that is pretty much worn out and then down here is brand new. So they're going to cut, or they're going to be abrasive at different levels. I just want to make sure that the whole stone or plate, in this case, is even. Alright, knock out 5, and then we'll jump down to our 3s. Now, Ketaped, having that 0.156, where that's pretty much the max that it can handle, is more or less, makes the Ruxin Pro something that I still need to have around the house. Because I do have some knives that are 0.19 or even a little bit thicker, and so the Ruxin Pro is good for that. Another issue where the Ruxin Pro actually outshines the Ketaped would be when you have a knife that you would really like to go low on your sharpening angle. So with this system, a lot of knives If you have a deep belly, so this is the belly from the spine all the way to the bevel. If you have a deep belly, on this one you can get down into that, 12.5, something like that. If you want to go real low, you would have to use the Ruxin Pro in my case, or you'd have to go to like going straight to stones. And eventually I'll get to showing you guys some stones. I just don't really have a good place for it. It's cold, so I don't really want to be goofing around with stones in the yard. There we are. Remember, tape's not so important on this side because I clamped it on this side. So this side's nice and even, making sure that I'm not having any slippage or anything like that. So it's held in nice. Good thing about that tape is that tape kind of is a buffer in between the two pieces of metal, so it's not as slippery. So then I don't have to over tighten these, because you will bend them. Ruxin Pro is a lot more prone to bending depending on what model you have. This one right here, a little less prone to bending, but I just don't really want to chance it, because having to bend it back in place, especially because these are a clamp that's not independent, so I don't have two sides that I'm tightening into each other. This is one continual piece. Down to my 3s. At 1,000, you'll start seeing that the bevel starts getting a lot more shiny. That's exactly what we want to see. And now we're ready for 1,500. But considering I've been working on this for a little bit, I wouldn't mind seeing where that edge is at for sharpness. Yep. Tornado siren. First Wednesday of the month. Alright, so did I change out to my 2,000? Yes, I did. Alright, so we can go ahead and give her 10 swipes. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I've got a little bit of a burr on there. It's not helping me cut too much, so I got to knock that burr off before I test the cutting again. So first Wednesday out here in the Midwest for this area. We have a tornado alarm that goes off, and I just happen to be sharpening knives when all of this is going on. That's okay. It's sunny outside. So welcome to the Midwest. Alright, down to our 5s. And at least the tornado test is over. Alright. There we go. Now we're down to our 3s. Keep in mind with this, without having that choil, that back end's just going to look a little dirtier. So about that third sharpening. It'll drive me nuts till I get my third sharpening on it. And then it'll look shiny from one end to the other. Go ahead and jump up to our 3000 stone. I think this knife will sharpen out pretty good. So the main issue, you start getting into the softer metals, is your burr. Even pushing the way that I do, which minimizes how much burr you're actually dealing with when you're at the end of it, you're still going to have a much more sizable burr than, let's say, S35VN or any of those, or M390s, S90Vs, MagnaCut. So every type of metal has its own little quirk to it. D2 does not really like having a fine edge the way that I like to sharpen. So I've found that, okay, you want to be toothy because you have larger carbides, let it happen. So if I buy a D2, especially ingot, I just know that it's going to be a toothier cut. And I don't worry about it too much, because toothy cuts are good at some things that having a pure polished edge with absolute minimal peaks and valleys or teeth, and that's okay. So cutting rope, I want to cut a rope. I want something else that, where it's going to bite into the object. The teeth are really important. But let's say I'm doing fine cutting or woodworking. If I'm doing woodworking, I want a purely polished edge. I just don't want it getting hung up on any of the metal. There's our second test of the tornado warning system. So that was 20, and then because I know that this area is a little bit rough, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little bit of extra attention. Now I'm not moving much material off at this point. All I'm doing is really polishing. So I'm just trying to take those ugly spots that are towards there that'll be there for a little while, at least until the third sharpening. I'm just trying to make it look a little bit prettier in the meantime so it doesn't drive me crazy. And hopefully the sirens will be done here in a minute, because it is kind of annoying. Let's start this one off, hit that a few times. Okay, now I'm at 20. Now if you're falling off the tip, your strop's going to let you know it. Just like the diamond plates will let you know it. You start getting a little bit of leather strands right off the end of the tip. And that is pretty much a mirror polish. I'm going to do another set of 10. Then I'm actually going to take this thing off to inspect to see if I still have a little bit of a burr. Like I said, these have stubborn burrs. Another issue that you can run into with the ketaped is the rod that's attached to the plates or the strop. There's bearings that come with the ketaped. They're not very good. So I went ahead and ordered some other ones for a 3D printer, and they worked out a little bit better, but they're still a little rough in their own right. If we'll pull this thing off, remove as much of that as possible. And all that is the compound that I use. My preferred compound is a Flex Cut Gold, which is more or less woodworking tools. That's what that company's known for. They make a few other things, but yeah, it's mainly woodworking tools. I like them quite a bit. I do a little bit of woodworking. I'm not saying I'm very good at it. I'm just saying that, you know, I've bought some tools, and they make every single one of those little tools very, very shiny. So I'm going to go ahead and trust myself here a little bit, pull this off. Because if I do have major issues, then I have to retape it. And that's not the funnest. But let me give that edge a look. A little hard with the camera in the way. Yeah, I see just a little bit right in there. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to grab a block strop, and I'm just going to run it a few more swipes in what I believe are little problem areas. And just like how we were feathering with this block strop, I'm doing basically the same thing. I'm just kind of feathering it in, trying to work out any little burr that I have left. But when that burr is gone, oh my god, it'll be a laser beam. I think this is at 20.5 is the bevel angle. I want to catch both sides. Guess I could do that in the camera a little bit more. There you go. I like to lay my thumb like that, and you see my thumb's starting to get a little bit dirty, and that's from it dragging across the surface of this strop. And this has Flex Cut Gold on it too. I'm just being a little bit more aggressive with this than this because my hand is keeping it steady. Having a strop on a block is a very useful thing. Having belt strops, we'll get into those later, very useful as well. Matter of fact, for certain steels, it's more beneficial to use a belt strop than it is using a block strop. So let's say 440C. It's about the line where you would want to start using a strop that's on a block. Everything that's lower than that, you get away with using a strop that's on a belt. Let's see how we did. That's fairly fine. I could do this all the way until I needed to sharpen it again. I absolutely love it. When you have a knife that can cut things nice and easy. So, there you have it. Thanks for watching. I'll try to get into some more problem children type knives. Knives like these are kind of a bear, so makes it a little bit easier that the clamps I can take a clamp off, put it on the other side. Because if you look at this knife, it's got a decent amount of flex to it. So clamping down here, moving the other clamp to the other side, and then clamping down here. Well, now I have my whole edge tightened in. So the only flex I'm going to have is basically this way. I'm not going to have it this way so much. But these do move just a little bit. This one's tightened up. I like trying to make sure that I have it all tightened up prior to showing you, because I don't want that thing popping off like a shotgun round in my face. I'm trying to show you guys sharpening. But thanks for watching.